Oh, yep. Not. Do I have audio? Not sure. Let me see. You can never tell. Yeah, I think I got audio. Yeah, I got audio. Alrighty. Tonight's subject is going to be clones and plugins because I would say DAWs, but um, DAW we've been using DAWs since for almost 30 years now. So there's just, and then we've been using plugins for 20 years, but I'm a little warm. Alrighty, so yeah, I'm just waiting for people to chime in as people chime in. But the reason I'm talking about plugins and clones is because clones are really starting to become popular for people that um, clones are really starting to become popular um, for people that are actually wanting physical outboard gear or actual physical gear other than just plugins. So the clones um, are the big deal. Hey, what's going on, Born Shamir? Um, welcome to Sunday's live stream. This is probably gonna be a short one today. Normally I'm probably on this thing for almost 2 hours, but I don't plan on being on very long tonight. So I'm just talking about clones and plugins because like for me, I still like using outboard gear. So um the subject is because there are people that are still die hard with buying um you have to have the Neve or the Universal Audio, whatever the case may be. And I'm just talking about the clones and the plugins. Honestly, now in 2025, your audio quality is not going to be diminished simply because you got a clone or you're using a plugin. Um, just like your audio quality is not going to be superior because you're using an actual pool tech or Universal Audio 1176, whatever the case. Not anymore. Even though there are always going to be people that are going to claim that the top name gear is the best way to go. There's still people out there on YouTube, but what I'm starting to see more and more is like I've watched quite a few studio tours. I can't even name the amount of recording studio tours I've watched now. And in their racks will be something equivalent or the same piece of gear like I have, or maybe you have, that's super, super affordable. Like maybe the Pro VLA 2-channel compressor. You'll see that in those studios as well. It's like, well, they're definitely using it. So, whatever the case may be, it's kind of like with Joe Correll and Treasure Out. He's got quite a bit of warm audio gear. So, they're going to be people. I was watching a video where all of a sudden now there's quite a few people trying to slam or bash the warm audio gear now. They're trying to say now their 1176s aren't that great or whatever the case may be. And then I've watched countless videos of them, so many different studios and so many different people using warm audio gear. and they're having tremendous success with that gear. So whenever I see videos that crap on certain pieces of gear, like there was one video of this guy was crapping on Rode, microphones. I'm like, I whenever I see channels of certain channels and they're crapping on gear that I know for a fact is not nowhere near, as bad as they're trying to say this piece of gear this company is, then I'd stop watching those channels, those people. So that's what I do. So I'm just kind of talking about the clones and the plugins. Bonus thing now, it's even with people that bash Behringer. Saw a video just I think yesterday or the day before, where they was talking about Behringer and they had shady business practices or whatever case may be, or their stuff wasn't kind of subpar quality and all that. Well, Behringer used to have that reputation. I think Behringer has made tremendous success and tremendous improvements in their gear. But it's almost like this with any piece of gear, whether it's Rode or Warm Audio or Behringer, whatever. My thought is, if you don't like the gear, of course you don't have to buy it or use it. But I'm not going to sit there and say, it's like someone to sit there and bash Camaros because or whatever the case may be, or Dodge Chargers or whatever. And other people are having fun and they love their Camaros or Chargers or whatever. It's just everyone likes what they like. They use what they use. So that's kind of the topic for tonight that we're going to chime in on. Kind of like, do you have any clones or plugins that you like or use? And I just want to hear people's thoughts, especially I really want to hear people's thoughts if they have any of the clone companies, or and this day and age is funny. Like I was watching quite a few like videos where like there's some people that would have BAE, compressors or preamps or whatever. And I'm like, BAE, isn't BAE cloning Neve? They're trying to act like BAE is this breakthrough own company. And they're like, no, BAE look just like a Neve. So, so it's kind of like, but there's people out there that want to bash. I'm laughing because they're going to criticize and accuse certain companies of being, they're just cloning Neve or SSL or whatever. I'm like, it's kind of like I'm a bash Behringer for coming out with a 1073, but I have a Heritage Audio 73. I'm like, what? So the Screw says, I love my W73, Warm Audio 73s. Yeah, they're I welcome Warheart Arts. With the it's kind of like it's almost like they don't understand they're being hypocritical. You can't own a piece of clone company and then bash another company accusing of being a clone company when you own a clone, unless you have a Neve. And even that, you're going to probably be a little biased because you actually have a Neve, right? So, and I'm no different. Like I do have a couple of pieces of actual, their own piece of gear, like the Avalon 737s or the the Universal Audio 610. But I have quite a bit of, some clones, so it's kind of like, do I think the actual Universal 610 is better? No, not really. Not really. So welcome. I hope I said welcome. I did say welcome to Born Shamir, welcome Warheart Arts, the Screws, welcome. Matthew Hats, welcome. Um, so let me see Warhearts. Even Neve copy Neve. There's AMS and yeah, right. Just it's funny. Um, because I watched some videos of Rupert Neve, and even Rupert Neve, in his latter years, have said that some of his design. There are companies that have made design of preamps and all that is superior to what he designed. Rupert Neve said when he initially started the company, I think in the 50s or 60s, that he initially was just trying to fill work orders for requests, like for making broadcast consoles and stuff like that. He wasn't trying to become the pinnacle of recording. It's the same thing with Bill Putnam and making 1176s and LA2A compressors and all that, and so forth. He was just trying to design gear to get a job done. So I think that whether you buy an actual piece of gear or a clone or whatever, you're just buying a piece of gear that's getting your job done. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be um, the actual whatever. You don't need to buy the tube tech. You can buy the warm audio version. It'll get the job done the exact same way. So that's the talk. That's kind of the topic. Also, what I like about plugins, which are the most affordable pieces of gear you can buy because it's software, is that plugins is super, super affordable. Plugins are only as limited to the power to your computer, your PC, or your Mac. So, with plugins, you can buy a plugin and put it on 32 channels if you wanted to. The thing is, it depends on how taxing it will be on your processing and RAM. So Warhol Art said, I don't have a 73 pre at all. He said, yet. I don't have I have 73s, but they're not like I have right here. There's audio, and I also have what they call Altrons 73s. They're Neve clones. So they work as great or as good as an actual Neve without spending. To me, it's kind of like whenever you buy a piece of gear, and whenever you buy a piece of gear, or whatever the case may be, if it works just as good as whatever, the audience and whatever you're recording and mixing and all that, your audience cannot decipher whether it's a clone. They can't. No one can. Not even the best engineers in the business can decipher a clone from the real piece of gear. It's too much going on in the mix to be able to do that. Excuse me. So let's see. Maddie says, same with the Gibson and Fender guitars, tools for the job. But people, yeah, it's almost, I think, well, let me read a couple more comments before I make another comment. Baron Schmidt said, I own some Behringer old and modern items. I like them for what they are. They allow me to be creative, play music, and exactly. They're just, Behringer's just another company. But you got some people that crap on Behringer. But I'm like, I have Behringer gear. It works well. So Worse says, I really don't need one. I have other options. Yeah, and the 73. It's almost like with the Neve 73, like people try to, like that's the holy grail of preamps, and it's really not. It's just a popular preamp. But it's almost like any, like that's like a car. Any car can get you from A to B. Every car can, long as it's running, can get you from A to B. So, and believe it or not, there are preamps that recorded music or whatever the case that weren't Neve at all. Like there have been times where recording studios have used the preamps in their consoles, and that's what you heard on tracks, like an MCI console, and they use all the preamps from an MCI console, like a GH610 or whatever, or a Helios console or whatever, or a API console or a Trident console. They use the pre's in that. Um, so But there are going to be people that will sit there and say the Holy Grail is the 1073, and I'm like, well, the 73 is basically a Neve preamp with the EQ, you know. So it's just a choice of preamp, but you can use any preamp. You can use ARP preamps and be perfectly fine with them. So, but like what I was talking about for tonight's live stream is that there are people out there that just you have to have an API or Neve or an SSL console, Yamaha NS10s or whatever, maybe focal monitors or whatever. You have to have a Studer 2-inch tape machine. You have to have all the ubiquitous outboard gear, the stressors, Pultecs, 73s, whatever. And you have to have that. And that is absolutely false. A person can actually do a record. They can go buy themselves a Sony or Yamaha console and use the preamps in those consoles and use the EQ in that board and probably be perfectly fine with their recording. So, oh, let me see. Welcome, DL. So, yes, it's worse as some people love and compare their toast points and caviars, but it's just still chips and dips to drink with. Yeah, it's just it's almost like if you buy. Let me think of some Ruffles, right? Potato chips, or you buy with some other brand potato chips, but the flavor of the paper, the flavor of the chips is sour cream and onion, right? How much different will one over the other? Now there are some. Well, I'm probably not a. Uh, well, no, that's a good comparison because it's kind of like both of them are sour cream, but they might have a little bit different flavor. But they're both sour cream and onion. That's the same thing with mic pre's or gear, microphones, um, preamps, EQs, compressors. They do the same job. They just have a little different flavor to them. But the output's the same. But all of them are sour cream and onion potato chips. So let me see. So then what's the I'm doing great. So the topic is talking about clones and plugins are the game changer. It really are, because it have made, I would say, anyone that's in the recording studio business, the clones and plugins have made it way more affordable to be able to get the same results as the big commercial studios have, which has the most expensive gear. They've made it affordable now. It's like I can buy a rack full of clones for the price of one actual piece of gear. It's kind of like if I buy a Pultec for $8,000, or I can buy a bunch of Pultec clones. I can have 20 of them for the price of one real Pultec. Are you going to hear the difference? Some people will claim you will. I'm like, So let me see. Oh yeah, Borshamir said, well, it be a matter of ingredients quality, and that's like the circuitry. Well, like I said, it's kind of like I was trying to make a comparison with the potato chip. It's like you can buy this You go to a gas station and let's say his name's Sally's potato chips. There's Ruffles potato chips. There is such and such potato chips, but they're all sour cream and onion, right? Well, if you're used to the Ruffles brand of tasting sour cream and onion potato chips, you know what that tastes like. You're going to be used to it. But the other potato chips will taste somewhat like sour cream and onion. It may have a little taste a little different, but it's the same thing. That's all it is with gear. It's still sour cream and onion potato chips. So now, let's see. Oh yeah, Matthew has said, "Yep, tubes and transformers for the win." Okay, gotcha. Deals said, "Are there better preamps than others? What is the point of running a source through a preamp to increase the SPL coming into your interface?" No, not sound pressure levels. The point of better preamps is let's really, some preamps are transformerless and so forth. Some preamps are designed to be clean, but here's one of the things with a better quality preamp. The cheaper is not that you could have two preamps. One is let's say it's $150 preamp, and the other preamp is a $900 preamp, and they both have pretty much the same functionalities. You're going to have an input gain, you're going to have an output gain, they're going to have a pad, a 20 dB pad on it. It's going to have a 48 volt phantom switch on it because microphones that are condensers need 48 volt phantom power and so forth. They might have a couple of other options, whatever, it's so forth. Now, with those two preamps, they might, other than that, they're pretty basic. There's no transformers or tubes or nothing like that. It's just a clean, it's got a preamp. All of this is just a circuits where you have capacitor resistors, an op amp, and so forth. So you're like, well, they're bothly circuitry wise, they're basically the same. So why is one $150 and that one $900? A lot of the times they're better circuitry, they're better wiring. Whenever you push it, the cheap one a lot of times will introduce noise, unwanted noise, because it's got cheaper, less quality components than the $900 preamp. That's really the difference. It's quality, especially in your sonics for recording. So if we go into a preamp that has transformers and tubes or whatever, all you're doing is just adding that transformer saturation color tone to the preamp that you're trying to capture in that as well. That really warms up the microphone or whatever that you're preamping. But the preamp itself is to bring mic levels, which are really low signal levels, to a line level, which is a recordable level. That's what you're trying to do. So whenever you go from mic to line, you're going from a low signal input to an actual low level. So, and you're just trying to do that without introducing noise. It's called a noise floor. You're trying to reduce the noise floor. It's almost like you can hear my fan right here running. So this is kind of like a cheap preamp. You can hear the fan running with this. You can hear it. But if I turn my fan off, that's what a higher quality preamp will sound like with me turning the fan off. There's no extra noise because it's better circuitry. If that's probably the best way I can describe it. So what you're paying for is better quality audio because you're not introducing noise. You don't want to capture this fan blowing noise in your recording. So let's see. And let's see. Let me see. War says, damn, this freak off would have been great except for the flavor dip wasn't my okay. Uh War says pool techs that are like $2,000 per night. It just I think the price of pool techs is like it's kind of almost like what's the best way I can describe it? It's almost like listening, or it's almost like the Fairchild 670 where they made it $30,000 because of what it is. Pool techs do not need to be $8,000 or $10,000. They really don't. I don't care, how they try to sell it. The same thing with a Shadow Hills mastering, whatever, or the Chandler Limited, or whatever the case, or the Fair 670 Fairchild, or what they just don't need to be that price. But it's almost like I'm going to sell something just to see how many people would actually buy it. And people, whenever you put, it's psychological. It's the reason why they sell stuff for whatever it is, for $9.99. It's always whatever 99, like $11.99 or $12.99. When you could just even that out to $12.99, really is basically $13. But $13 doesn't it's psychological. $12.99 or $13 is basically about the same price, except a penny, difference is a penny. But that's the psychological to it. So psychology to it. So let me see. Got some more comments came in. Oh, somebody talking about Diddy. Oh yeah, everyone knows that. Everyone knows about P Diddy, and he got sentenced. But welcome Tactical Committee and Jazzy Lamo or Lamel. We're just talking about clones and plugins tonight. He said Don Perignon on a beer budget. So Warren says there's a difference with harmonics with 2 trim or op amps. Very subtle details usually. Like I said, that's what like you can have the different levels of preamps. Like I was saying before, you got some preamps that don't have tubes or transformers in it. But then you start introducing tubes and transformers like that, it just adds those harmonic, even or odd order of harmonics. There are videos on, if people don't understand even or odd harmonics, there are videos on it that explain second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh order of harmonics, these and so forth, and this harmonic distortion, and it really gets deep into that. But there's videos on it, so so going back to what I was saying about with the clones and plugins, it's made it more affordable for people to be able to do this, which I think is a great thing, because if you look at the only gear that was available was the expensive stuff, this would be out of reach out of 90% of us. 90% of us would not be able to, if you only had to record the expensive commercial studio way, and I'm talking about on a large format console with a $50,000 tape machine, a $500,000 console with about $500,000 in outboard gear and cables and microphones and all that, $2 or $3 million worth of gear. That's the only way you could do it. 90% of us would not be here right now. But because of DAWs, plugins, clones, the audio interfaces are super, super expensive now. And so forth. And on top of that, everything sounds so much better today. Yes, that's why I said clones, clones and so forth are the game changer. It really is. So, So welcome, Ogilla Lapix. Ogilla Pix. Welcome. And yeah, I do hope everyone is doing well. It's football season. So and I know Matthew S is in Australia, but United States football season for us is, football, So some people got watch. Some people have their teams, whatever the case. Like I already know, I'm not worried about. I know Kansas City's going to win, uh, but I was really shocked that the Dolphins beat the Jets. So, but anyhow, I'm not going to get into football. So, Secret Studios, welcome. It's a good evening, paratrooper. I'm catching a weird lag between your video. Yeah, it is. It's the because the computer's trying to process this, the audio with the camera. So I've been trying to figure out how to get this. I might switch to a different program where I can go live and I can actually fix the delay. Right now, I'm just going from my camera, which is processing through into YouTube, and it's trying to record that. Then YouTube is also recording the video at the same time as it uploads. So that's why you see a little bit of delay. So it's been going on for the last 5 or 6 weeks since I've been with this new 4K camera. So just got to bear with it, try to get it figured out. I will get it figured out. So, oh yeah, Dr. says, I think 500 series. I forgot about the 500 series. I should have put that in the comments. 500 series is also another way to get gear without breaking the bank, because you can afford 500 series way more you can than 19-inch rack gear. And if I'd known what I know now, I probably would have went 500 series rack gear a long time ago. So, because so many people have gone 500 series, so which is another tool. So I think the recording gear business is, very, very affordable for all of us. Now, the recording business and the music business is totally different. Big recording studios just don't make the money they used to anymore. The music business don't make the money that it used to anymore. So that's a different story. So, which might be a good thing for another topic. Because it's kind of like, if I invest in all this gear or whatever the case may be, am I going to get a return on my investment when artists just aren't making any money like that anymore? It's a good question. So, let me see. Okay, I wouldn't even. Oh, it's the Brisbane. I wouldn't even know who that is. Yeah, but if that's your team, congrats on the Brisbane Broncos. I have no idea who that is, but so let's see. Secret says, do I have any? No, I do not. I don't, like I said, because I know Midas makes a 500 rack. There is, of course, API, Lunchbox. There's quite a few with the 500 series, whatever the case may be. There's even the SSL XL desk where you can actually have a console and put in your own 500 series modules. But like I said, I've seen so many people with 500 series. I just never gave it a thought because I've already started building my racks of gear with 19-inch racks. But I have thought about taking some of the gear that I'm not going to use, swapping out and putting 500 series. I thought about it, which that might be a long, down the road. I just don't know. But I do look at 500 series. Like, I'm really interested in those DBX EQs that are 500 series and so forth. So who knows? But then also at the same time, it's like, well, it's a cable mesh behind my rack, so it's a lot of cables. So I think about that too, because when you're running a lot more cables to a 500 rack than you would one 19-inch rack, but it all varies. So, but that's another great option. It's the 500 series, which brings me to, once again, it's almost like, I think with clones, 500 series and plugins, they're just absolutely reason why I don't see why anyone would not be able to afford to do this. It's even IK Multimedia with their Pro Studio, even with their Pro Studio setup, program where you can get all their plugins and their amp modeling programs and all that. I bought the studio uh from IK Multimedia. It gives you all that for like $199. So if you want to be totally in the box, and just use the plugins, that is also another, whatever the case may be. So let me see. Mix Club. I'm looking at the Midas Heritage 3000 work. Yeah, like I said, Midas. That's one. Welcome Seven Sun Music. Oh, he said if you're not doing Seven Sun, you said if you're not doing this for out of the love of at this point, you shouldn't. You probably should be doing it. The money, the music is gone except for 1%. Yeah, that's a 100% accurate statement. But there are people that still think that you're going to become Michael Jackson rich in the industry, and I'm like, record labels are on their last leg. That's why they keep trying to change their contracts, and how they it's just that this is just and I think the TV and movie star industry is going to be next, because I think AI is going to really kill a lot of because they can do so much stuff with the AI now that doesn't require 500 people to do a scene. I'm talking about stunts and flipping a car off the side of a cliff, an actual real car. They can use graphic imagery and all, with AI to make that's what they're doing it now. So instead of making getting all these cables and getting these actors with cables and having them fly and behind blue and green screens, now they're just gonna have AI that can make someone look like they're flying through the sky with just AI. Now it's changing. It's happening fast. So so let me see. Did I miss some comments? So oh yeah, Max says it's never been a better time. Yeah, because it's so affordable now. It's super affordable now. But like a lot of us, we're doing it just because we love to do it. But you'll spend so much money. Even if you don't have nowhere near as much gear as I have, you could still spend $2,000 or $3,000 and stuff. That's not a small amount of change. To not, you might make some money, you may not. I don't know. So it really depends. War says, well, labels and studios are jumping out. The labels and the big commercial studios, those are the ones, because the big commercial studios used to cater the artists that got advance money from record labels. That was their big number one clients. But now, so many, instead of them, a lot of them staying open because they couldn't. Most of those recording studios were renting the space, leasing the space. And once they stopped getting those big name artists, they couldn't afford to pay their bills. They couldn't afford to pay the staff, the maintenance crew, and studio managers and all that. So they had to shut down. So they liquidate their gear. Because a top-notch recording studio with the staff and the gear and all that, and the building and the lease and all the expenses is expensive. It's not cheap compared to like us that do it out of our homes. So, and the thing is, if with a big studio setup, even in your home, it is hard to get A-list artists, clients, and producers to come to someone's home unless they've already have an established relationship. They know somebody, they're connected, or whatever the case may be. It's like, for example, Warren Hewitt produced like a pro because he's been in the business and been with labels and signed artists and so forth. He can get artists to come to his home. But that would be a lot harder for someone like me to get an A-list artist client to come to my home because they like, everyone's still in the mindset that if it's a recording studio, it still should be in a commercial building with the, that's the thought process. You still should have an SSL console or whatever. You still should have a whole bunch of outboard gear. And, that's even though a lot of people can get it done with plugins, but that's still the mindset, even though you would think by now they would have, but that's just, whatever the case. So, let me see. What did I miss? A Warhol artist are still needed. Yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, definitely. Artists are definitely needed. But the artists is the ones that have always been suffering. It's the record labels. The artists never really made. Artists, how artists can really, selling merchandise and doing a lot of touring and thinking outside of their regular singing career is how they can actually leverage their income. But for the most part, but record labels treat artists like just numbers. It's kind of like you can have an amazing artist, like, well, there's a million women or men that can sing. And it's true. There are millions of men or women, that can sing. But, it's sad that they treat them like that when artists used to have artist development. And when an artist got signed with a label back in the 70s, 80s, they had something special. Now it's just a number. It's because it's corporate. It's corporate kind of thoughts. So our idea says, so what makes the most difference achieving a pro level sound? The preamps, the converters, your processing power via outboard gear. All of it. That's what makes the achieving a pro level sound is all of it. Having really nice sounding microphones, going through really nice preamps, through a really nice converter, having some the compressors, the EQs, all of it. That's how you get it. Other than that, if you're recording bands, stuff like that, the only other significant thing to that would be the space. That's really, and of course, I'm not gonna get into little small details like acoustic treatment and bass traps and diffusers and all that. That's pretty, you have to figure that out for your recording studio. But yeah, that's really the difference in the pro sound to amateurs. Better, decent sounding microphones, some nice sounding preamps going through, your signal chain into a nice converter. $100 converter versus $1,000 converter. You're going to see a difference in the conversion processing. But the PC and Mac, which is an everyday, tool, because they don't build PCs or Macs specifically with the point of recording studios. They, PC Macs are just computers for the everyday user. but we just use them as our recording tools. So let's see. Oh, Seven Somebody says, how many streams one has to get to pay for an Orion? I'm like this. When it comes to streaming, you are better off getting a loan or whatever, credit card, and just buying it, or doing the Z Sounds and making payments faster than depending on any money that revenue that you can get from streaming. That's what I would say. Let's see. Oh, I got more comments that came in. I didn't get a chance to read them. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I'm actually, if I ever get any more rat gear, I'm probably gonna get 500 series. I just missed that one, but let's see. So let me see. The Mix Club. I think the movie is already dead. At least going out of the city movies, we have lost 3 or 4 this year. And you know, the thing is, here's the crazy thing about the movies. I don't know about y'all, but I'm sick of. I'm burnt out on Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, The Thing, The Hulk, all those superheroes. Superman. I'm burnt out on Superman movies. I was watching some short films on, like, there's some people that they make short films on, like, YouTube channel called Film Riot. He'll make short films, and so forth. And these short films are 10, 15, 20 minutes long. They're not long, but the what they're doing with those short films is better than what's coming out in the theaters. One quick one was about a guy, and he gets sucked into a black hole that puts him where he thought, it was about a movie where flying in outer space was like going to work, like jumping in your car and going to work, and you could be out of space, do some missions, and come back and be home the same day. It was supposed to be that time frame in the future, so you can jump in the ship, go do what you got to do. And then, I guess the wind must have caught the mic as I was waving my hands, but he could jump into outer space, come back, but apparently something went wrong, and all of a sudden he ended up going to a black hole or something, and he almost didn't make it home or whatever case. But the graphics and how they did that short film to me, I was like, that's better than what's coming out of Hollywood. That's the kind of stuff I want to see coming to the theaters. I don't want to see another Superman. I just don't want to see another Superman or another Black Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, or what. I just don't want to see that anymore. I'm burnt out on that. I'm burnt out on Batman videos. I mean, you're not going to get any more Jokers that can do what Heath Ledger did. I don't care. They try to do another Joker, but yeah, unfortunately with Heath Ledger dying, you can't top that Joker. Heath Ledger was the best Joker ever. And, people might disagree with me, but that's just my opinion. So it's done. It's played. No more Batman. Whatever the case. But anyhow, so Born to Miss, the quality of music is taking a toll with all the accessibility. I don't think it's I wouldn't necessarily the quality of the music is taking on accessibility, but I guess that's kind of true, because they've made it so accessible that you don't have to buy it anymore, because it's all over YouTube, it's all over the internet, which probably diminished the quality of buying a CD or a vinyl. People are like, well, why I need to buy it? I can just go on the internet. I can put on my streaming playlist or whatever. So yeah, that might be some truth to that. Let me see. Like I said, it's kind of like Tron, like I said, it's just, even if they come out with another Tron, or another Dune video or Duke video or something, I'm just burnt out on Batman and Superman and the Fantastic Four. I'm just burnt out on that, you know. So Zone Recording Studios, welcome. We're just talking clones and plugins and 500 series. Let's see, over the years, I have spent a crazy amount of money, but just building my studio was stupid expensive. I've talked about that in a couple of videos. How much does it cost to build a studio? And I think I even tried to lay down some numbers. This is probably a video I shot about 2 or 3, 4 years ago. What's the actual cost of building a studio? It's so much cheaper to build a home recording studio in a bedroom than it is trying to build a commercial setup. Just the amount of money you'll spend in wiring by itself, it can be astronomical. It's the cabling, the grounding, rooms floating within rooms, the glass, the build. It's so expensive. They spend all that money, and then on top of that, to do all that in a commercial studio type of build with a control room and live room, and yet and still not own the building that studio's in. I would hate to spend that excessive amount of money and then we're not renewing your lease. You need to get all your gear out or whatever. The studio needs to close because we're tearing this down and turning into a shopping mall, or we're going to tear the studio down because simply because we're going to make a highway through it or whatever. And that happens all the time. So you spent a couple of $1 million, you have to do it like Blackbird did. You really have to own the area and own the building and everything else. If not, if you just lease that was the reason why I recording studios started closing in New York and places like that, because the rent for the cost, the lease was astronomical. They couldn't afford it no more, especially they weren't getting clients. They weren't getting the amount of, they weren't getting, when you were typical, all these clients were signed to labels and they can pay the studio because they were getting all these crazy advances from the labels. Once that stopped, a lot of those recording artists stopped going to those type of studios. So they had to close because that's their money. So welcome, Rockport Tigger. So let me see. Did I see over the years? Let's see. That's LA 1176, etc. But they struggle. Yeah, it's just there. Like I said, it's just there are people out there that are still wanting. This kind of like I've made a video. Is it worth building that type of commercial recording studio in a commercial building? Is it worth it? If you can't get the clients, because you got to have, not only do you have your engineers, your assistants, you got a studio manager, you got a maintenance staff, there's a lot of people, and all them people have to be paid. They have to be paid. So let me turn this so the wind blowing across the mic. So okay, let me see. We have I'm thinking is there room in the middle? A studio with some knockoff gear and a good engineer, affordable rates. And like I said, like the only people that's going to really, really, really care about the name of your gear would be gear snobs. But even if you had independent artists that just looking for a place to record their band or whatever, they a lot of times are not going to care if you got knockoff gear or whatever. They're not. They want you to record them and and get a good result. That's all they care for, to have a good experience. They're not looking at that. Oh, I can't record because you don't have no 11. Those are warm audios. I can't record unless it's a universal audio. No, you'll never get. No, that ain't happening. Your war says, I say mic technique is a good where a pro is caught. That would be good mic techniques would be, I guess it's a underrated subject, miking techniques, because a lot of times it's almost like people that are good at it assume that everyone else is good. It's almost like the Dunning and Kruger effect, where some people think that because they're good at something, they assume everyone is good at it, and that ain't true at all. So, oh, dear, says the costs just keep stacking up. I even haven't even bought any outboard. Yeah, that's why I said the on for DL. That's why I said plugins and clones are a game changer because they make it more affordable than trying to buy an actual Pultec or Universal Audio 1176 or Teletronics LA2A or Euphorica Lab distressors or whatever the case may be. You can buy a clone or whatever the case, and you'll be perfectly fine. They're way more affordable, and you can get pretty much the same results. So you don't have to spend $4,000 on a Neve 1073. You can go buy yourself a Ventec Audio for $1,000, versus $4,000. That's 75% cheaper. So what? Like I said, welcome, did I say? He said, "Welcome, Mark." Rob Portiger, welcome. Like I said, Studio Route 5150. Oh yeah, that's I think 5150 is Eddie Van Halen's studio. 5150. Technology has always been the greatest disruptor of the music industry. Yeah, well, yeah, it's like anything. Technology makes life easier, but it's also at the same time it can also can be a curse. So let's see. So War says I sold my MPC one, didn't like it. I don't use my MPCs enough. I have older MPCs. I have the MPC Studio and the MPC Renaissance. I don't use it enough because I'm not big into creating that way when I make music. It's just a tool that I have. I like playing on when I am trying to create some beats and stuff like that. But a lot of times I use the keypads on my controllers when I'm into like Studio One, and I have the drum programs inside of Studio One or whatever the case may be. So, see, Chrome don't get you home. Talking about Google Chrome. Let's see, the truth and the lies. The gear is accessible, but how many have the education and the knowledge? The gear is great, but the hobbyist will make bad reviews because he or she don't know anything about EQ or compression. And that's a true statement. That's a very true statement. Because I've seen people buy gear and don't understand EQ or compression. They don't understand a good signal or whatever the case. They just, So let me see. Oh, Matthew said, I'm looking forward to a distressor. Right now, they have a distressor clone plug-in, but they don't have an actual real distressor unit. And believe it or not, distressor out of all the compressor units that they sell, and I'm talking about the high-end studio gear, the distressor actually are more affordable. So, welcome, Spawn. So, and he said, if anyone comes up with a distressor clone, it'll be Behringer. I think Behringer, I think Behringer's working on quite a few clones right now. I wouldn't be sorry if Behringer comes out with called the Behringer 707, which happened to be an Avalon 737 clone. I would not be surprised if Behringer don't come out with a Pultec. They're probably working on a Pultec clone as we speak. They're probably working on some 1176 and LA2A clones right now. Who knows what Behringer, because they're yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Behringer comes out with an SSL bus compressor clone. And the latest clones that they made with the three, those are some of Behringer's better rack outboard gear. So we'll see. Our work sponsor says Barker. I appreciate it. So let me see. Let me see. Let's see. I do all my mixing and mastering and the box at a very high level. I know how the gear works and what it does just to replicate it. But that's the key. If you know how to work real gear, you'll know how to be able to do plugins, and because plugins and real gear, they pretty much function the same. Compressor, on a real piece of gear. Well, what are the functions on a real piece of gear? A real compressor. You got your threshold, attack, release. You got your ratio and your makeup gain. Where you get a plug-in, what does it have? Attack. It's going to have the threshold, attack, ratio, attack, release, makeup gain. It might have a few more functions in the, like maybe a mix knob and maybe a filter or something like that they implemented in the plugin that the actual piece of gear doesn't have. But if you know how to use all of those on a real piece of gear, you know how to use the plugin. But if you don't know how to use the real piece of gear, even if you start on the plugin, if you don't know how the real piece of gear work, you won't understand the plugin. So the object, yeah, so that makes sense. Robert Tick said, like, we need another Pultec clone. Well, you think about it, it's funny because with Behringer coming out with their clones, it's like, in my mindset, that's the first thing I thought about when Behringer came out with their clones. It's like, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, here we go. Here's some more clones. It's like a need to, okay, here we go. Here's another 73 clone. Warm Audio's already done it. Ventec has already done it. BAE's already done it. Heritage Audio's already done it. Golden Age has already done it. And yeah, all these 73 preamp clones, like here come Behringer with their clone. I'm like, here's another 73 clone. So yes. So now it really boils down to, well, who's got the most affordable clone, right? Who has the most affordable clone? And so far as a Need 1073 clone, out of all of them, the Altrons, which I have, are the most affordable because those are only $399 a unit. Now, so you have to look at it like that. So let's see. Let me see. The distress was 3,000 in Australia. Jeez, it must be over. Yeah, well, tariffs and everything else, and taxes and all that. But because you can get a single distressor for about 1,100 in the U.S. I've seen people that live in Canada where, because of Canada, whatever case, that it's $2,000 for but in the United States, the average distressor is only about $1,100. So that, man, I don't know if it's because Australia, you have to ship it out there. The cost, they got it because you got to fly stuff into Australia or ship it. That's the only way stuff is getting to Australia is to ship or fly. So, oh yes, well, can you say a plug-in is a clone? Believe it or not, actually that's what they are. They are clones. Well, the only thing is they started becoming clones because the people that was making the GUI, the graphic user interface, the way these plugins look, they're making these plugins look like outboard rack gear. When you go back and look at where plugins started, like with Waves, their plugins were just looked like software. It looked like it was just a program. With Waves when it first started, they would come out with their for example, the R Verb, or they would come out with the R channel, or they would come out with their compression. It was just a box and had threshold, the attack, release, and the makeup gain and so forth. It was just a box with a line, and but it was a compressor. And people started making more and more clone plugins look like route gear. So I guess you can technically say, plugins are definitely clones. It's just a clone in software form. I guess that's a, So let me see. We're living in Clone Wars for sure. Yep. We're living. Yeah. The clone, because they're super popular now because they realize everyone's buying them now. Everyone's buying them. The only time you would have something that would not be a clone if it's its own design, like the Art, the Pro MPA, and the Art VLA. The VLA is a compressor. The MPA is a preamp. They're not. They don't look like anyone else's piece of gear. So that's where it's not a clone. But you got people that are making clones that look like, whatever case. Like I would say my Tone Beast sitting on top of my, right here on my shoulder, right, my Tone Beast. Can you say those are API clones? Not really. They don't look like API, even though they're technically internally API preamps. But if you look at the Warm Audio Tone Beast, don't look like an API. So is it technically a clone? Versus, the Warm Audio 73, which looks like a Neve. So my thing is, if it looks like a Neve, if it looks like another piece of gear, it's a clone. If it doesn't look like someone else's piece of gear, then it's not a clone. It's just a piece of gear. That's how I look at it. So, and Rockport Ticker said, Analog Obsession has the best Pultec, and it's free donation. I have Analog Obsession plugins. I have their channel. I like their channel strip called the channel view. I think it's the Analog Obsession channel view, something like that. I like that channel strip plugin. So let's see where transparent plugins are just just adjust math, no color. Some plugins actually, it's, you're not going to get Transformer 2 color, but plugins can alter the sound well, because they're altering the conversion of what you're hearing. So it gets technical now, but and yeah, the high quality Neve clones are still 1,000 to 15. Imagine buying a stereo. Yeah. But even that, I know 1,000, let's say you bought two I think, like say Warm Audio had the 273 for like 1,600s or whatever, but still for the price of two Neve stereo, which would be about $6 to $7 grand, is actually a great deal for, so oh yeah, US made products very expensive. Well, I'm not gonna get into the politics, but the US has made it expensive for everybody. But that's politics. But we'll move on. So let's see. Let's see. And everyone's going to have their favorites of clone companies, like I have a subscription to Slate. I need to go on there because I paid a subscription to have access to all their plugins, and I haven't been on there a long time to update, to keep up, because I don't use their plugins enough. Because I have some Warm Audio. I have some IK Multimedia. I have the T-Rex plugins. I have some acoustic audio plugins. I have some Waves plugins. I have the Slate plugins. I have, if I start thinking about it, I got a lot of plugins. I think on this computer alone, I got over 1,000 plugins. And it's kind of like with all that many plugins, even the SSL channel strip plugins, the Andrew Shep's channel strip, and so forth. And it's like, you all these plugins, and I'll never use half of them. So I stopped buying plugins because I won't use. I got over I think 12 or 13. It might be more. I'm not even using 100 of them because up here, most of the stuff I'm using for processing up here is outboard gear. I'm actually using the racks. So I said, no more plugins. So I haven't bought any plugins in a while. Even though they're making plugins every day, and they'll try to sell it. Man, you got to have, that's the marketing tool behind it. They'll have some Grammy Award winning mixing engineers. Man, I got this new beast, plugin you got to get from Waves. It's really actually, it does nothing no different than any other plugin they've come out before. It's just marketing. It's almost like trying to get Crystal Algae to get people to get an SSL Origin console, but people aren't spending 50 grand on an SSL Origin console. Most people just aren't. So let's see the SSL bus, and has a like I said, I have the SSL bus compressor and channel strip. I just don't use the plugins enough to use that extent amount of plugins. So all sponsors, the plugins are close to the real sound, but the public will not hear the difference. To tell the truth. But for an engineer, I'm the same way. I've listened to mixes that were just plugins, and I've listened to stuff that I do on the console running through the outboard. I can hear the difference. I can definitely hear the difference. So Matthew said I use about 10% of my plugins. That's for me too. I use about maybe max 10%. So let me see. Let me a few more because like I said, I was going to shut it short tonight. So let me see. And it really depends on what you want and need. Some people are going to be more out of the box and they're going to run through gear, and other people are going to be more in the box. Basically like what Spawn was saying about, really, and I've made it before. I've made videos like this before. The audience psychologically cannot tell the difference, even though a trained ear can hear the difference in stuff, even in volume levels, and so forth. A trained ear can hear, even in the way something was mixed on a console with tape machines. Earth, Wind, and Fire mixes don't sound as deep, bassy, like if I was to listen to some 90s tracks. They don't, because they didn't record bass heavy in the 70s and 80s because, at that time, everyone was still listening to vinyl. And you really couldn't get that low end on vinyl because, you're trying to get all that frequency to go through a needle on a phonograph that's turning 16 or 33 RPMs or whatever, or on a 78 or whatever. You're just not getting that like you are in today's music with the technology and the way drums sound. Back in the day, the heaviest part of the music was the drum set, how they record the drum set. But now with better gear and more advanced stuff like that, music sounds thicker and more dynamic than it did in the 70s. So I think that it's it really depends on what you're trying to capture. So let me read a few more, then I'm gonna cut it short. Let's see. Yes, yep. Let's see. Matches. I never buy plugins though. I just use Logic ones and the ones that are free with the user interface, like TDR Nova and so forth. And there are a lot of free plugins that you'll be perfectly fine with. So let me see what else I got to see. I'm missing more. My computer has only, okay, gotcha. Born Schmidt says the deliberation of various plugins can just contribute to people not actually making music and taking it to the pro mix their stuff properly. So the DIY causes pros to lose. I mean, it's kind of like this. It's like this is how I consider, if I and let me know if y'all agree with me on this. In today's recording medium and access to gear, whether it's the most expensive gear out there, clone 500 series plugin software, whatever case, it's almost like walking into a grocery store. And every roll in the grocery store has so much options of food. You can go to the cereal aisle. You got everything from Frosted Flakes to Captain Crunch or whatever. It's so much variety. It's not like, but it's like when you go to the grocery store, you're not going to buy every single box of cereal. You're just not. You're going to pick your favorites. That's Captain Crunch and maybe some Cinnamon Toast Crunch or whatever. The next I'm gonna, there's some people like, Mrs. Baird's bread, or you got Wonder Bread or whatever. You're not, or whatever brand of bread. You're gonna pick a certain bread or whatever. That's what's going on in today's market versus if you go, I'm telling my age. 30, 40 years ago, when you went to these stores, you didn't have nowhere near as many variety of products. You had a lot less limited amount of choices. So, it's kind of like that's what's going on with gear, plugins, and all that. So it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. Sometimes, back in the day, and I did a video like this before too. I'm sure y'all probably seen it where all I had was just my keyboard, my Sonic SQ1 Plus. I must have made more music just using that one keyboard, and I was forced to be as creative as I possible with as little that I had, because I've have the ability to buy gear and buy more and more gear. It does hinder your creativity because you're so overwhelmed with trying to, especially when you look at videos that come on YouTube or whatever, and someone's introducing a new gear product, and they'll come out, oh man, this Mojave has this brand new tube microphone. You got, this is a game changer. Or and you've seen the videos or the video, and you'll have a microphone and the guy, the video or the link is like this, and the guy's going, and you like well, let me click on that video and see what he's talking about with that Mojave microphone, not realizing that Mojave microphone is probably no better than the MXL2 microphone you already own. You know what I'm saying? It's not like this Mojave is gonna all of a sudden now I can get Grammy Award winning hits because I bought a Mojave microphone. If you already got an MXL2 microphone and it's working well for recording what you're recording, you already have it. You don't have to buy the Mojave because some guy on YouTube made a video about a Mojave MA300 2 microphone. Like game, no. And that's what happened, and I'm the same. I've been guilty of that too. Go around and I'm watching these videos and someone's talking about the new, Behringer's got the new Behringer 676 preamp. I'm like, I don't need to buy the Behringer 676. I already got a Universal 610 over there. So I'm not going to buy the Behringer 676. I already got a Universal 610. I got more than plenty preamps. I just don't plan on buying any more preamps. I got plenty of them. So the goal is to keep buying preamps. How about I need to use my preamps and actually record stuff? So I'm laughing because I'm like that. We call that gas, gear acquisition syndrome, right? You got, oh man, I got, Behringer got the new, or oh man, Teletronics got this new microphone that's coming out for $1,000 from Vintage King. They got this new microphones, $1,000. You got to hit, and you've seen it. You'll even have like Warren Hugh to like produce like a pro, whatever case. If you, lot microphones or whatever, or you see Warren Hugh, I got a new set of studio monitors or whatever. Like, there was nothing wrong with the Genelec 1031s that Warren Hugh. He's being endorsed. That's why you'll see turn around now. He's got a set of Focal Trios, because he's endorsing that. He's getting, So it's kind of like if you got a set of Focal Trio monitors, I'm not worried about, Dying Audio's got the new, whatever set of monitors. Like, how about I just use those Focals I already got and I should be making music on it. So, but gas it's an addiction, because and I was the same way. I am no different. I was so used to going to a studio and seeing 8-9 racks of outboard gear. That's why you see I got 8-9 racks of outboard gear. And I had to stop. I was like, wait, Mark, instead of you buying 25 different preamps, how about you start using the preamps you got? So, yes. Okay. So let's see. Oh yeah, there's a Game Changer release every hour. Yep. Very, very, very true. Yep. That's how they sell it now. Just like, the clickbait is real. And there are a lot of clickbait. There's titles. People learned how to title the videos to get you to click on it now. Do not do not do anything to your studio till you watch this video. That's a clickbait video. This new microphone is a game changer. That's a clickbait video. You best believe he's gonna be endorsed. Oh man, the new Telefunken 500 microphone is fire. That's a clickbait video. So let me see the new Chingy thing out is best thing. Or that's an old Elise's big remote, I think. Oh, you're talking about my BRC controller for my ADATs? If you're talking about that, that's the BRC controller. I started using that when I started using ADATs in the 90s. So it makes life easier instead of actually trying to control it and arm everything and fast forward. I can do everything with the BRC controller. It's no different than if you're working in your DAW and you're, setting your, and I hope people are working in their DAW like that. Every time you get into your DAW and you should be setting up points where you can go to the verse or the chorus or the bridge or whatever. You can just click and go to it. Your workflow should be able to be like that, especially when we did it with clients. And we're gonna we need to redo the verse, vocals in the verse. She better go like that. Well, those had the same thing, on that BRC. I need to go to whatever. But the only difference is when you're working on ADATs, if you hit that certain location point, you can hear the tapes going click, 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 because they got to sync. So you have to wait when it comes to tape. That's the only difference. But that was also the nostalgia thing of working in a recording studio. If you worked on with ADATs or you worked on an actual real, you had to wait for it to spin back to that point. But, what was the beauty of waiting for that is artists can actually, instead of being instantaneous in the DAW, they can actually get their thoughts together. And so once the tape was ready to go, you said, okay, we're ready, we're rolling. They got their thoughts together. They didn't have to be like so instant, because in the DAW it's instant. When I go to location 9, bar 9, bam, it's there. Like, damn, okay, So, but some people like working fast like that. But Matthew says, yeah, Mark, I do have many print. I do. If The amount of preamps I got, it's almost out of control. I have to laugh. Okay. So you said I gotta lean on my parent. Yeah, like I said, yeah, GA it's real, and I'm no different. So so it's Warren says sales 101. There's an ass for every seat. So let's see. Warren says, but I want tape and I want it now. We call JG Winthrop 1877. Okay. Oh, well, I'm like, so believe it or not, I did miss Blackbird did a thing with a tape machine I think a couple of weeks ago, whatever. And it is something about tape. I love, for me, sonically, I love the sound of an actual analog console with a tape machine and outboard gear. What I don't like out of all of that is the tape machine's inability to edit like you can in the DAW. If you could edit your tape, a 2-inch 24-track tape machine, you could edit a tape machine like you can a DAW. Yes, I would go back to a tape machine. But physically, and in whatever case, it's almost virtually impossible to be able to do that with a tape machine. Even though some people say, how do you edit tape? It's called a razor blade. But that's destructive editing. I don't care how you look at it, because once you cut the tape, you can't uncut it. You can do that in a DAW. You can't do that in a tape machine. Once you get that razor blade and cut, that's a wrap. That tape is cut. You can't undo it. Right, poor ticket said, I work so fast you can't even see me. I can see you working fast. Cordell Williams says, where can I hear your mixes or music? I got some stuff on Reverb Nation and SoundCloud under it's called UND Music Production. Let me see if I go over here and Google it. Can you find it? You should be able to find it. If you Google, let me see if I can type in Google here. Okay. If I type in, UND Music Production SoundCloud, and it'll say UND Music, UND Music Production B&B Recording Studio East. I'll pop up. So you got UND Music Productions, all one thing, and then it'll pop up it'll say UND Music Productions B&B Recording Studio East. That's the link. You'll better hear some stuff on there. Rob Portier said, "What's Google?" Not gonna even. Let me see. Spawn says, "Explain what tape is." I hope people know what tape is. I really do. What up, Man Network? Like I said, tape is just, because what's great about tape, you can record over and over on tape. But like I said, if it wasn't for your ability, when it comes to tape, if it wasn't for the inability to edit like you can in a DAW, Because you know, a DAW is basically a recording studio in a box. You got your tape machine, you got your mixing console, you got all your outboard gear, your editing, you can do time delay, you can, I can drag tracks from track. If I want to drag track 2 to track 10, I can just highlight and drag it. You ain't doing that on tape. The only way you're on tape is you literally got to cut 2 and put it on tape, or you have to record 2 to 10. A lot of times, if you got tape machines, you limit to so many tracks. Some tape machine 24 tracks. Well, you really only had 23 tracks because you had to use a 24 track as a Symphony time code. The sync, in case you were going to sync on a second 24 track tape machine. So now you got Symphony time code on that, which is basically this digital information so that both tape machines start, stop, and all at the same time. They built in internal syncing in ADATs. When you sync ADATs together, they got internal sync clocks internally. And then, of course, now when you're syncing multiple audio interfaces together, of course, is word clock, syncing word clock and all that together to get these ADATs to sync together. But it's just that you can't edit tape like you can in the DAW. That's the only reason. Other than that, I would still be on tape machines. I would, like me, I'm still console, I'm still outboard gear. If you could edit tape, the only time, a lot of times, believe it or not, if you had a band or somebody that you recorded and they were well rehearsed, they can do it with the 1 or 2 tapes. A lot of times you don't have to do a lot of editing to the tape. And that's how they used to be. It's just, it's kind of like solid musicians. Sometimes in 1 or 2 takes, they go back and they can do some overdubs to fix a few parts of the tape. And that's it. On that, they ready to mix it. They didn't have to really cut the tape as much to fix sync timing or something like that. So Matthew said Google, never heard of him. Google is I hope y'all joking with me on the Google. Let's see. Rapport Ticker said, what Google? I hope y'all are joking with me. So somebody wants me to spell it. Okay, let me type it in. So y'all can see UND Music Productions. So and if you go to Google, which is www.google.com, you'll be able to find me. So let me see. He said, oh my God, my supervisor asked me what's a Gmail. Like Google, email is Google's email. They call it Gmail. So I think Warheart says, I think Atari Tascam did it first. Tascam, believe it or not, Tascam's been in the business since the 70s. I think Atari came right after them in the 80s. Atari was the original, now this is radar system, but it's basically, I think it is radar, and somebody was trying to get me to do the radar system, but once again, you can edit because it's a hard disk recorder, but its radar was so expensive. I was going to go that route for a minute, but it's so expensive. It's just easy to work in Cakewalk or Studio One or Logic Pro and all the DW. It's easy to work with that. So I went the route I went, with having the Antelope Orion interface, and that's the route I went. So let me see. A horse, yeah, the tape was magic. He said drugs had nothing to do. Yeah, there's a lot of drugs. A lot of clients were on certain stuff in those recordings to use. So um so man just said that's the fact. The music was loud right now. Now the music even louder because of direct, you know. So oh yeah, it says some recording studios. I had an Is Radar system for many years, so I miss having it. Like I got the ADAT. I don't have an ADAT. I have the Elisa's HD 24 track hard disk recorder. Um, but I really wanted I really want to get the Is because Is was probably the closest to sounding like tape out of all of those systems, but they were so expensive. I think they're still expensive. So, but like I said, anything if I could get the warmth, the fatness, the depth, and all that, like you get on tape. And I know there's like people like, well, there's tape saturation plugins, and I just don't feel like doing all that. But because it's still somewhat generic, but I think personally I would rather have tape if it was edible. But it's not. So this is why everybody's studio, this is why so many studios, even the commercial studios, went to Pro Tools setup, using Pro Tools and like the Avid H190 HD 192 converters. Um, they try to get, the most high-end conversion and all that they could to sound as close to tape as possible. So, but especially when it comes to certain styles of music now, So, Born says I use a Fostex quarter-inch reel. Yeah, we used to have an 8-track Fostex reel to reel when I was in the studio. It was 8-track. And it's tape. It's tape sounds really, really good. But like I said, if they ever come up with tape that's edible like a DAW, and I don't even expect tape to do everything that you can in a DAW, but if it was just, whatever the case, if it had at least a quarter of the features that you have in a DAW, like I said, the only system out there that is really close to sounding like tape and it's actually edible is the hardest recorder would be Is Radar, but they are so expensive. But I would say anyone, if they want their recording studio to sound as close to like the analog world with a console, outboard gear, and tape, and they can't, they don't want to buy a Studer A27 tape machine or whatever, MCI, an Atari 24-track or whatever, and buying all the tape reels. And because here's another thing that's not taught about tape. Tape reels that you buy your tape have to be stored in certain temperature controlled environments, because if you don't, that tape is very brittle. You can't store it in like 20-degree weather or 115-degree hot closets or attics or whatever. Because you try to put that tape back, if you stored it for years and then you try to put it back on tape machine, it's just going to fall apart. It's going to, So, oh man says, yeah, it's got to be baked. Yeah, it's just tape it's the way you treat tape. You have to be really, really careful with tape. It's like me, I got ADAT tapes here. These are ADAT tapes that I still keep. And even then, you have to be careful because it's still tape. It's not as brittle as like the Ampex 2-inch tape or whatever, but it is tape. So Um, but like I said, if it wasn't for that, I would definitely have a tape machine because it's the sound. It's just, millions of records were recorded to tape. Every record I love from the 80s and 90s was recorded on 2-inch tape through some sort of large format console when they were doing processing through outboard gear. And that's the sound I like. So that's the sound I chase. So, but I would be a type of person, I would never tell someone if they love working in the box with plugins, because if it's all done right, it all sounds good. It can sound different, but it all can sound good if it's done right. So, somebody said a Studio 800 and 827 if the clients are willing to. Yeah, it's kind of like because if you can even find someone who even knows how to maintenance a tape machine, like for those that don't know, there's never used a tape machine. A lot of times there's another reel that you have to start running, and you have to calibrate each channel on a tape machine. For example, because the VU meters, which stands for voltage unit meters, can be off. And you're trying to see, you can be misleading to your levels. You want to make sure every level is proper and a tape has a play head, a record head, and an erase head, and they have to be serviced, and they have to calibrate all the heads, because they have, 8-track tape heads, then there's 16-track, there's 20, all that's got to be, to the machine. So, and then you pull it back in the machine, and there's cars and there's adjustments you have to make on that tape machine to get it right. So it's time consuming. And then on top of that, if the channel goes out, you got to know how to fix the channel on a tape machine, so forth. But overall, it can be cumbersome, but the sound quality, is just hard to beat. So anyhow, let's see. I used to leave the legendary analog machine. That's when the science of gear and the music was great. Oh yeah, like I said, people know me. I'm kind of in both worlds. It's just that I'm still a bit old school. So, oh yeah, demagnetized too. Yep. So, Warheart's Art says self-proclaimed pretty engineer. Like that. Born Schmidt said can't be with a stick. So, man, I went over longer than I wanted to. So this is gonna wrap it up for the night. Once again, I'm always glad you all tune in. Just want to talk a little bit about. I think clones, 500 series, and plugins are a game changer because it makes buying gear a lot more affordable than it used to be. Before you had to buy a $500,000 console, you had to buy $50,000 tape machine, and so forth. You don't need to do that anymore. They made everything so much affordable, which is great for us that want to do this in our homes and actually afford to buy the gear to do it. So that's the reason why I say it's the game changer. Now, people that got endless deep pockets, why not go for an SSL console and the studio tape machine and Pultex and all that? But most people just don't. Are you going to be able to hear the difference? And that's subjective as well. So, Reggie King says, welcome, Reggie. Well, I'm about to cut it off. But anyhow, yep, about to. So I tuned in. I came in about 7:15. I try to come in around 7ish every Sunday. Central Standard Time for people that don't know Central Standard Time, because I'm on Central Standard Time, being in Tennessee. That's about the time that I'm going to do these live streams. So for those that, so if you're tuning in a little late, I'll just let you know that's about the time I'm usually kicking in. So Oh, Reggie King said, "Oh, you always missed the live stream, but I do watch. I appreciate that." So Reggie King sees I have a 2-inch tape, full analog studio, also digital. I prefer analog emulation, getting better. But I'm to me, and I'm glad you always watch the videos. And I'm like, something about the end of the video, about the end of the live stream. But if tape was editable, if I could edit and do the stuff I can do in a DW, I would rather have tape. That's that's just me. Some people they can work in their DAW, use their plugins, use the mixer. All they need is an interface, and they can make that work all day long. I've tried it that way. I just don't like the sonics of being that way. To me, not for what I'm trying to chase and the sound I'm trying to get. So, anyhow, once again, I always thank everyone for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next time I do the next live stream. And I really thank everyone for tuning in. And like I said, I try to do this every week, but so I think some people tune in a little, the time differences or whatever. So, but I want, like I said, I'm usually about 7-ish Central Standard Time. So I appreciate everyone tuning in, and I gotta cut it off. So we'll see y'all next time, and thanks for tuning in. Y'all have a great one.